California shines like a promised golden beaches, endless sunshine, and dreams that never die. But beneath that glitter lies something older, darker, and far more patient. From forgotten mining towns to abandoned canyons, there are places where people vanish without reason and where even the bravest deputies refuse to patrol after dark. These are the places that hum when the wind stops. The spots, marked on no official maps, whispered about in truck stops and dive bars. Tonight, we're going to visit 12 cursed places in California where the legends outlived the people who told them, and by the end, maybe you'll understand why some maps should stay incomplete. Legend 1, the Cursed Bridge of Turnbull Canyon, Whittier, California. They say, when the wind cuts through the canyon after midnight, you can hear a single car engine screaming, followed by the sound of metal tearing apart. Turnbull Canyon's curse began long before cars ever touched its roads. In the 1800s, this stretch between Whittier and Hacienda Heights was once Tongva tribal land, its hills used for rituals of death and rebirth. Spanish missionaries renamed it Las Colinas de Muerte, the Hills of Death, after a series of disappearances among native converts. Then, during the 1,930 seconds, a small religious cult used the canyon as its private sanctuary. Locals reported seeing torchlight processions, hearing chants, and once finding the burnt remnants of an infant's crib near the base of the ravine. The canyon's modern legend started in 1952, when a teenage couple vanished there after a late-night drive. Their car was found days later, engine running, radio still playing. No one ever saw them again. 20 years later, a pilot crashed his plane in nearly the same spot. Rescuers swore they heard voices calling for help, but no one survived. Over time, the sightings multiplied white-robed figures appearing near the old bridge, a ghostly child walking the road, headlights that chase, drivers uphill only to vanish in the rearview mirror. Paranormal investigators claim electromagnetic spikes pulse from the canyon walls, while skeptics blame swamp gas and mass hysteria. Yet even the sheriff's department admits, every few years, another hiker goes missing. Locals treat the canyon with wary respect. They hold no festivals, no ghost tours, just silence when the sun dips low. Some say the land remembers every drop of blood spilled upon it, and the bridge where the teenagers vanished still hums with an unseen vibration, like a heartbeat that won't stop. And if you ever drive through Turnbull after midnight, keep your windows rolled up. Some say the voices are still there, waiting for someone to answer. 2. The Haunted Lighthouse of Point Sur, Monterey County, California. A cold beam cuts through the fog above Big Sur, though the lighthouse's lantern hasn't worked for decades. Sailors call it the Dead Light, and fishermen swear it guides no one to safety. Built in 1889, Point Sur Lighthouse was meant to guard ships from the jagged rocks below. Instead, it watched disaster after disaster, the Los Angeles, the Thomas P. Ross, and dozens of nameless wrecks. Lighthouse keepers lived in isolation, months without contact, surrounded by wind that screamed through the cliffs. In 1918, one keeper's wife was found wandering barefoot through the fog, whispering that something came out of the sea. She vanished before dawn. Her body was never found, only her footprints circling the tower again and again. Visitors report strange lights flickering in the sealed tower, footsteps echoing across the stone stairs, and the faint smell of kerosene drifting from nowhere. A Coast Guard officer in the 1,950 seconds swore he saw a man in an old uniform polishing the lens, though it had been removed years earlier. The officer quit the next day. Historians suggest paranoia, isolation, and ocean gases. Locals claim the sea took what it was owed, that every lightkeeper who stared too long into the fog lost a piece of himself to it. Today, Point Sur is a museum, but staff refuse to stay alone at night. The fog rolls in thick and heavy, and if you stand near the cliffs, you might see that ghostly light sweeping the waves, searching for the living among the dead. Legend 3, the Black Dome of Mount Shasta, Siskiyou County, California. Mount Shasta doesn't just loom, it watches. Rising out of the northern wilderness, it looks serene under daylight, but locals say the mountain hums when it's hungry. The legend began in the 1800s, when settlers moving west heard stories from the Shasta and Modoc tribes about a smoke mountain where sky gods descended in fire. Then, in 1904, a prospector named J.C. Brown claimed he found an entrance to a vast underground city beneath the mountain. He described golden tablets, ancient mummies, and glowing crystals, but when he returned years later with an expedition, he vanished, and so did every member of his team. Not a single trace was ever recovered. Since then, stories have multiplied like echoes in the rock. Climbers report sudden bursts of static from their radios and lights flickering deep inside the snow tunnels. In 1931, a pilot flying over Shasta claimed to see a metallic craft rising from its crater, moving without sound. Decades later, hikers have sworn they met pale, robed figures who spoke in archaic English and disappeared into the mist. Skeptics call it a magnet for UFO chasers and mystics. Scientists point to magnetic anomalies and volcanic gases, yet no one can explain the strange disappearances, park rangers, travelers, even entire search teams, swallowed by fog so thick it feels alive. Modern spiritualists treat Shasta as a vortex, a place where dimensions overlap. Every summer, they gather with crystals and chants, hoping to connect with the mountain's hidden energy. Locals just avoid it after dark. The old-timers say the Black Dome keeps its secrets buried, and the mountain takes anyone who digs too deep. Legend 4. The Devil's Gate Dam, Pasadena, California. At sunset, the sandstone gorge near Pasadena glows red, and the shadow it casts looks like a horned face staring back. That's where the dam got its name, Devil's Gate, and where the stories began. Built in 1920 to control floods, the dam sits atop land once feared by the Tongva people, who called it a place where spirits walked upright. In the 1,940 seconds, rocket scientist Jack Parsons, yes, the same man who helped found NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, used the nearby Arroyo Seco for his bizarre rituals, blending science with occult magic. He believed a portal could be opened through energy and willpower. Then, in 1952, Parsons blew himself up in his own lab. Some said the gateway he sought was never closed. After that, children started vanishing near the dam. 2 boys disappeared in 1956 while playing in the tunnels. Their bikes were found, but not their bodies. Years later, a teenage couple vanished on a hike. Search dogs followed the scent straight into the spillway, and then it just stopped. Locals whisper about a shadow current that drags people away, or a voice that calls their names from the other side of the gate. Paranormal groups have recorded unexplained whispers, sudden temperature drops, and a deep mechanical hum that doesn't match any known source. Skeptics call it echo and paranoia, but even they avoid the tunnels after dusk. Today, the dam still stands, a relic of stone, silence, and something unseen. The city keeps it fenced, yet graffiti reappears overnight. Sigils, names, half-finished prayers. And sometimes, if you walk by the reservoir in the dead of night, the wind slips through the gate like a breath slow, deliberate, and far too human. Legend 5. The Cursed Mines of Bodie Ghost Town, Mono County, California. They call Bodie a town frozen in time, but time doesn't stay still. There it waits. Every plank, every shattered bottle, every rusted cart carries a warning. Take nothing from Bodie, or Bodie will take something from you. In the 1,870 seconds, Bodie was California's wildest boomtown, lawless, rich, and blood-soaked. Fortune seekers filled the saloons faster than the miners could strike gold. Murders were nightly entertainment, and the town's cemetery grew faster than its main street. When the gold ran out, Bodie emptied overnight, leaving behind homes, personal belongings, and a silence so thick it feels like pressure on your chest. The curse began in the 1,940 seconds when tourists started pocketing souvenirs, bits of ore, nails, even shards of glass. Soon after, the rangers began receiving letters of apology. People wrote from across the world, claiming sickness, job loss, even deaths followed them home. They returned the artifacts by mail, begging the spirits to lift the curse. Rangers still keep those letters locked in a cabinet called the Bodie Curse Box. Skeptics laugh, saying it's guilt and coincidence, but locals know better. They talk about phantom miners seen in the old stamp mill, the sound of pickaxes clanging where no one's worked in a century, and lamps glowing in windows of houses long abandoned. Today, Bodie stands as a state historic park, preserved yet restless. Visitors swear their photos blur when aimed at the mine shafts, as if something refuses to be recorded. The warning sign at the entrance reads simple but true: take only pictures, leave only footprints, because in Bodie, the dead still count their gold. Legend 6. The dark waters of Lake Berryessa, Napa County, California. On calm nights, Lake Berryessa looks like glass, but under that still surface lies a drowned town, and the legend says its dead never forgave the living. Before the dam was built in the 1,950 seconds, the valley was home to Monticello, a quiet farming town. When the government flooded it to create the lake, they exhumed the graveyard, or so they claimed. When the last family left, the church steeple was already half submerged, the bell ringing faintly as it sank. The hauntings began soon after. Fishermen spoke of ghost lights floating across the water. Divers resurfaced shaking, saying they'd felt hands brushing against them in the dark. In 1969, a young couple was murdered on its banks by the infamous Zodiac Killer. After that, the lake's reputation turned poisonous. Campers heard screams from the water, and boats found adrift without passengers. Authorities blame strong currents and carbon dioxide pockets, but rescue divers tell another story. Radios go dead below 20 feet, and sometimes they hear knocking from beneath the hull. One diver swore he saw a full house, roof, porch, everything intact on the lakebed, and a figure standing in its doorway watching him. Today, the lake draws thrill seekers and ghost hunters, but even they stay clear of the glory hole, the massive spillway that drains the water in a perfect circle. Locals call it the mouth of the dead. They say if you listen closely when it roars, you can hear church bells ringing from the town below, still tolling for those who were never moved. Legend 7. The Shadows of Prospector's Gap, Mount Diablo, Contra Costa County. The locals joke that Mount Diablo isn't named for the devil. It's named after something worse that doesn't care about souls, only silence. And nowhere is that silence deeper than Prospector's Gap. In the 1,850 seconds, miners came to the slopes chasing quartz and gold. They dug deep, past the granite, into a fissure where their lanterns wouldn't burn. Days later, the men crawled out pale and shaking. One kept muttering, the faces were still moving. The mine was sealed, but those who live near the mountains say it never stopped breathing. Through the 20th century, hikers vanished without explanation. Park rangers found their gear stacked neatly beside the trail, as if they'd been called away. A woman in 1979 claimed she saw figures made of shadow drifting between the oaks, not walking, gliding. A pilot who crashed near the summit reported seeing a flickering light like an open mouth of fire just before losing control. His recording ended with one phrase, "It's looking at me." Geologists blame strange magnetic fields that scramble compasses and distort vision. Paranormal researchers point to Native American tales of a dark guardian that lives in the mountain's heart, older than the earth itself. Mount Diablo now carries warning signs, but rangers admit they don't patrol Prospector's Gap after sunset. Visitors describe sudden nausea, lost time, and shapes moving where no light should reach. The air grows heavy, metallic, almost electrical, as if the mountain remembers the miners and wants more. Some nights, from the valley below, people see a faint orange glow pulsing from the ridge like a lantern swinging or a door cracking open again. Legend 8. The Cursed Mission of Santa Barbara, California. Tourists see white adobe walls, rose gardens, and sunlight, but the locals know the mission is built on bones. It's called the Queen of the Missions, yet beneath its beauty lies a curse that has never slept. Founded in 1786 by Franciscan monks, Mission Santa Barbara was meant to bring salvation to the Chumash people. Instead, it brought death. Disease swept through the villages, and hundreds were buried in shallow graves behind the church. The Chumash warned the priests not to disturb certain burial mounds, saying they belonged to spirits who walk between dawn and dusk. The warnings were ignored. Soon after, monks began reporting footsteps in the cloisters at night, doors opening by themselves, and voices whispering in languages none of them understood. In 1812, an earthquake destroyed most of the mission, killing dozens. Survivors claimed they saw a figure of smoke rise from the ruins half man, half bird, before vanishing into the hills. Rebuilt in stone, the mission never lost its chill. Tour guides still talk about the weeping monk, a hooded apparition who drifts along the corridors, leaving wet footprints though the floors are dry. Historians dismiss it all as myth. The church calls it collective imagination. Yet maintenance workers refuse to enter the crypt alone, and visitors often feel their cameras fail as they cross the chapel's threshold. Each year, at the Old Chumash Festival, the elders light fires facing the mission not in prayer, but in warning. They say the spirits still remember the broken pact, and when the bells ring on windless nights, some swear they're tolling for the ones never laid to rest. Legend 9. The Whispering Pines of Lost Lake, Fresno County, California. Hidden in the Sierra National Forest, Lost Lake looks peaceful enough, a mirror of sky, framed by pine and mist. But after sunset, the woods begin to whisper, and if you answer back, you may never leave. The story began in the early 1900s, when settlers reported strange cries echoing through the forest. A logger's diary from 1906 mentioned a pale woman near the water, hair floating as if underwater, though she stood on dry land. A year later, he drowned in the lake, his body found upright, eyes wide open. Locals started calling her La Llorona of Lost Lake, not the weeping mother of Mexican folklore, but something colder, older. In 1988, a sheriff's deputy camping nearby vanished overnight. His partner woke to find the tent flap open and muddy footprints leading straight into the lake. The man's badge was found on the shore the next morning, burned black, though there'd been no fire. Since then, campers report disembodied voices calling their names in the dark, sometimes in the voices of people they love. Scientists say it's acoustics, the pines carrying echoes across the water. But hunters claim they've seen ripples form without wind and lights drifting just beneath the surface, like lanterns moving slow and deliberate. Rangers close the area during the off-season, yet every year a few locals break in to prove their bravery. Some return pale, silent. Others don't return at all. The whispers, they say, aren't carried by the trees they come from beneath the water, patient and calling. And when the lake's perfectly still, that's when it listens back. Legend 10, the Hotel of Lost Time, Bakersfield, California. Along the old Highway 99, there's a boarded-up motel that locals call the Hotel of Lost Time. No one remembers when it closed, only that people who go inside sometimes come out decades later. In the 1,950 seconds, it was called the Desert Star Motor Lodge. Cheap, bright, full of neon and cigarette smoke. Then one summer night in 1963, an entire family disappeared after checking in. The register showed their names. Their car was found in the lot, the keys still in the door, but the room was empty. Beds made, dinner untouched. Weeks later, the clerk quit after claiming he heard a woman laughing behind every door, even the locked ones. Years passed. Drifters and curious teens broke in, reporting that their watches stopped working and time inside seemed wrong. Minutes outside felt like hours within. One man swore he spent the night and saw dawn rise, only to find he'd been missing for 3 days. His beard had grown. His gas tank was empty. He couldn't remember driving home. Authorities chalked it up to drugs and delusion. Physicists suggested a magnetic anomaly from the oil fields. But locals tell another story, that the motel was built over an older structure, something used during the Dust Bowl for keeping the sick apart. The foundations, they say, were never cleansed. Now, only the sign remains, its last. Bulb flickering red like a dying heartbeat. Truckers refuse to stop there, claiming the air tastes metallic. Those who peek inside say the clocks on the wall still tick backward, slow and deliberate, as if time itself is trying to leave. Legend 11. The Ghost Train of Sunset Route, San Bernardino County, California. Every few months, someone reports seeing a train roaring through the desert at midnight, steam, whistle, and all. The problem? No tracks have run there for almost a century. The legend begins in 1883, when the Southern Pacific's Sunset Route connected California to the rest of the country. Somewhere between Colton and Indio, a freight train carrying dynamite derailed during a storm. The explosion killed everyone aboard, and the sand buried the wreck. Locals claimed the earth trembled for hours afterward, as if the desert itself was swallowing the train. When rescuers arrived, there was no wreckage, just scorched sand and a smell like ozone. By the 1,920 seconds, travelers along the new highway began seeing ghostly headlights in the dunes and hearing a whistle echo where no track remained. A railroad inspector in 1949 swore a black locomotive passed straight through his parked car without leaving a mark. He quit the next morning. Skeptics talk about mirages, seismic vibrations, or headlights from distant trucks bending through the desert heat. But old-timers know the pattern. Sightings spike near anniversaries of the explosion, and sand still turns to glass at the same stretch of road. Truckers call it the deadline. They say if you hear the whistle once, you're safe. If you hear it twice, get off the road, because the third time means the train isn't passing, it's stopping for you. When the wind picks up across the Mojave, sometimes the dunes shift just enough to reveal blackened metal glinting under moonlight. Then the next storm comes and the desert buries it all again, as if keeping a promise no one should ever break. Legend 12. The Curse of Aliso Canyon, Orange County, California. To most, Aliso Canyon is just a quiet stretch of wilderness. Golden hills, coyote tracks, eucalyptus, whispering in the wind. But locals say when night falls, the air thickens and the canyon begins to breathe. In 1878, a rancher named Elias McCready built his homestead at the canyon's mouth. Within a year, his livestock began dying, eyes burned, skin pale. His letters spoke of voices under the soil and lights that crawl. Then one evening, his wife and 2 children vanished. Only his journal remained, ending mid-sentence. It's coming up the well. The land was abandoned until the 1,920 seconds when oil drillers arrived. They struck something that wasn't oil thick, tar-like, but glowing faintly blue. Workers reported headaches, nightmares, even hallucinations of shadowy figures crawling from the rigs. Within a week, the operation was shut down. Several men went missing in the tunnels, their helmets found crushed as if by enormous pressure. Today, hikers sometimes find melted patches of rock where no fire has been, and GPS devices fail without reason. Residents of nearby Laguna Niguel report hearing low vibrations at night, like an engine running underground. Geologists blame natural gas pockets, but no tests have ever explained the strange light that seeps from cracks after heavy rain, cold, electric, and pulsing like a heartbeat. The county sealed most of the old wells, but no one stays long after dark. Some say the canyon isn't haunted, it's alive, and what sleeps below has only been dreaming. When the wind turns warm and metallic, they say that's the earth exhaling, waiting for someone to dig again.